I can't help if you don't talk to me.
You won't believe me.
If you tell me you saw Bigfoot or some creature in the woods, I will believe it. I promise. Tell me your story.
There were no creatures, spirits, or monsters. It was just me. It was my first time as a caretaker in Yellowstone. I barely knew the place, but when I saw it for the first time, and I fell in love instantly. I was in complete awe of it. The mountains that reached up to the clouds, and the valleys which cut beneath them. The forest which ran vast and all-consuming throughout. And then there was the wildlife. It was overwhelming in its beauty. People left the park in November for the winter season. And that's when I came in. I was to remain there until the plows could reach me towards the end of winter. I was the only one in my section. Alone for miles and miles. My job was to clear the snow off the roofs of some of the buildings and structures. That was pretty much all I was supposed to do, but it kept me busy. There was always more snow to clear. I enjoyed the solitude. I'd been craving it for some time. When night fell, my cottage was the only source of light. The entire landscape, mountains, rivers, and the forest, all of it was dark. It was like an ocean of black, if you can picture it. And a tiny pin drop of light in the middle. That was me. I read books and made dinner. That's how I spent my nights. One day there was a storm. The snow was falling so thick and so fast that I couldn't get past my own front door. I decided it was too dangerous to try going out, so I stayed in, knowing that I'd have to do double the work the next day. But it was okay, because it was better than being caught outside in a storm. That could be death if you couldn't find shelter. That night after dinner, I read as I normally do, but as I did, I noticed a strange sound. A soft, wet hum. I heard it before, only when I was absolutely silent, but I could never place where it was coming from or what it could be. So I forgot about it. I kept reading, and when I was too tired to read another word, I turned out the lights and went to bed. It woke me from a sound sleep. I was so tired and disoriented, I wasn't sure if I had heard something or if it'd just been a dream. Slowly I came out of my fog, and then I knew it hadn't been a dream. There was a knock at my door. I couldn't imagine who it could be. I was miles away from anyone, and in a storm, it would be impossible to get to me. I tried to look out the window by my bed, but it was too dark. I picked up the gas lantern and lit it. Then I moved to the door. When I opened it, the wind hit me like 1,000 needles. I aimed the light out, but there was only snow and darkness. Beneath me, though, I did notice something. Footprints. They led from my door to just outside the window where my bed was, then back out into the black. Sudden terror came over me as I looked out over the dark. I closed the door and latched it shut. After sitting in fear for a few moments, my exhaustion caught up to me again. Though I was afraid, I could think of nothing I could do. So I put the light away and I lay in bed. The following morning I woke up and remembered, but I had no idea if I had dreamt it or if it really happened. I opened the front door and found there were no footsteps outside. And though I let myself believe it had been a dream, part of me knew that the snow would have filled in the footsteps if they had really been there at all. The sky looked just as bad as the day before, but if I didn't clear the roof before another storm, the other stations could cave in. I can't express the fear I felt walking through the woods that day. Any noise sent shivers up my spine. I was convinced someone had been there last night, watching me sleep. But if it was true, why wouldn't they wait for me to open the door? And how could they have survived the storm? I cleared the roofs from the other buildings, and as I did, it began to snow again. By the time I started my journey back to my cabin, the snow was too thick to see through. I was caught in it, and worse, I was lost. My compass seemed to be working, but the more I followed it, the less I recognized my surroundings. My feet burned from the cold, my bones shivered. Then, darkness fell. I thought that was it. I would die right then and there, frozen in the woods. And then I saw a light. I thought maybe I had left the lantern on, but I remember turning it off. But I didn't care either way. I was glad because the closer I got, the more I realized that yes, it was my cabin, and I was home. The door was locked when I tried to pull it, but how could that be? Unless I was wrong. Maybe this was someone else's cabin. Maybe I wasn't as far from the other caretakers as I originally thought. I knocked and waited. The wind blew cold all about me. I moved to the window and saw the person inside. It was me. I stumbled back into the woods and hid. I watched as the person inside opened the door and looked out, the lantern held out ahead of them. I watched closely, trying to understand. Then they quickly went back inside and closed the door, as if they were afraid. Against all odds, I found my way back to the buildings I had cleaned and slept inside. I nearly froze to death that night. The next morning, I stood in the woods and watched the cabin for as long as I could before approaching it. When I finally did, I found it empty, and the door was unlocked like I'd left it. It felt foreign to me now, like I was in someone else's home, like when you have to stay at a stranger's house, except all the things in it were mine. The only thing familiar was the smell. It was tart and sour, but in my time here I'd grown to love it, and I was home. Outside, the world was frozen. The life and beauty I had been struck by when I first arrived had long since faded. I was afraid of the day because I could look out my window and see what was outside. I didn't want to see. But of course, the day was nothing compared to night. I needed the heater, but it lit the cabin from inside. I felt naked, exposed. I couldn't see anything past the windows. The only thing in them was my own reflection. I lifted the mattress off the bed and leaned it against the glass. I didn't need the bed. I had no intention of sleeping that night. I sat across from the door and watched it. Every time the wind blew and shook the door, I felt my stomach turn cold. At first, I couldn't tell if I was really hearing what I thought. The screams swelled and faded, or maybe they were just shrieks of wind pushing through the pines. I found the lantern and opened the door. The world was black. The light ahead lit only a few feet in front of me. I could see snow on the ground, snow falling in tiny specks, but nothing else. When it came from my right, I would aim the light towards it. Seconds later, it would be on my left. It was in front of me. It was behind me. It was close. It was far. I was terrified, and before long my fingers began to burn. I had to go back. When I did, I put the mattress back down on the bed. I was too tired. Fear and vigilance had taken it all out of me. I lay in the bed and listened, but there were no more screams. I had dreamt it, and I decided, or imagined it. If it was real, she would have seen my light. She would have seen it by now. The orange glow of the heater through the window. If it was real, maybe I would see her footsteps in the snow in the morning. Or perhaps she would wake me with a knock. These thoughts swirled in my mind, but I knew they were nonsense. I just needed sleep. And so I closed my eyes and did just that. The following morning I woke up and remembered that I had no idea if I had dreamt it or if it really happened. I opened the door and found there were no footsteps outside. And though I let myself believe it had been a dream, part of me knew the snow would have filled in the footsteps if they had truly been there at all. There was no way to know. I looked out over the ice and the dead trees and the leaden sky, which seemed like a concrete slate about to drop. I couldn't face it. I couldn't go out and do my job. I knew something was out there. I didn't know what, but it was there. Between the trees on the other side of the hills. I sat on the floor facing the door again. I stared at the wood of the door and listened. I wondered about her, the woman who screamed. I wondered if she had died in the night, and if so, would she come now? Would she come knocking and ask why I didn't help her? In the silence of the day, I could hear it again. The strange hum. The wet, sticky sound I knew I could never place. And then, something fell in front of me. Small like a speck, but solid. I leaned down to it. It was white and wriggling. A maggot. Something tickled my hand. I looked down and saw another maggot crawling across my knuckles. Another one dropped from above, falling on my shoulder. I lifted my eyes up. On the ceiling, there was the shape of a small square door. I'd forgotten about it. Forgotten about the attic. It was too small to go into, meant only for storage. At the edge of the square door, maggots writhed and dropped. Something was there. Something had been there the whole time. That I could place it now. It was the sound of 100,000 maggots feasting. I moved the heater to the center of the room and used it as a stepping stool. I climbed it and reached for the door on the ceiling. The smell, the familiar smell I've grown to love, was overpowering here. My eyes stung, my throat closed. I lifted my head to the attic. His small body entirely covered by them. A blanket of maggots so thick I couldn't even see him.
Did you remember then that you hadn't come alone?
Yes, I remembered.
They still haven't found your wife. Is she up there in the hills?
Just behind them. They'll have to wait for the thaw. It was a brutal winter. I tried to tell her there was nothing out there. Nothing but ice. But she ran anyway. She ran for me when she saw what I'd done to our son. She ran begging for help. Screaming for it. But there was no one out there. I listened to her screams until they died down. Until there was only silence and dark.
Why did you do it? Didn't you love them?
With all my heart. Too much. It was all I knew. It was suffocating. Some men shouldn't have that much love. Some men should just be alone.
I was 14 at the time. It was an ordinary day. It was a boring Sunday. I had no schoolwork to do or anything. Man, was I bored. So, I decided to go on Instagram for some entertainment. I was scrolling through some pictures and videos. Then all of a sudden, I get a DM. I say, maybe it's someone I know. I go to the DM to check it out, and it's from an older man who I have never seen before. He must have been in his 50s at least. He said that he was looking for a sugar baby. I just responded and told him to leave me alone and that I wasn't interested. When I think about it, I probably should have just blocked him. But then I told him that he was a creep and that I was only 14 years old. Thinking that was the end of it, he responds back to me saying that age is just a number and that he wants to come see me. I told him no, ew, and for him to leave me alone. And I regret it to this day for saying this. But I told him, you don't even know where I live. Then he responds to me with my address and said he is coming to me now. I'm not gonna lie, that scared me a lot because that was actually my real address. I was a little freaked out, but I tried ignoring it and just continuing my day like nothing happened. The next day came and I left for school in the morning. I walked to school. It's about a 15-minute walk. Both my parents couldn't pick me up because they both work in the early morning. As I'm walking to school, I see a car behind me. It felt a little weird as if it was following me, so I ran down a random street to see if the car was actually still following me. And to my surprise, it was. As I was running down the street, I was out of breath and slowed down. The car pulled up to me, and it was the same man I saw on Instagram. I was in shock, and I didn't know what to do, but froze. The man said, "Come in the car, kid. I have some candy for you." I said no thanks, and to leave me alone. I started walking away. He didn't like that, so he followed me from inside the car, then pulled up in front of me, got out of the car, then grabbed me. I was fighting, but he was too strong. He was pulling me to his car, then another car beeps the horn and says, "I'm calling the police." The man then lets go of me, goes back to his car, and drives away. The person from the other car called my parents, and I took the rest of the day off of school to calm down and relax. Missing school that day was the last thing on my mind. It's now 4 years later, and I haven't ever seen the man. I always thought about what would have happened to me if it wasn't for the other car that day. Would I still be alive? I never walked to school since. All I know is I'm lucky to still be alive, and I take every day as it's my last because you never know what could happen.
Rachel was enjoying her summer holidays, but had to save up for her college fees for going back to college. Last summer Rachel worked in a bar and enjoyed it, but since this summer had a lockdown and most of the bars and all the clubs were shut, she had no choice of securing bar work this summer. It was when she was in her friend's house one night that her friend Susie recommended the platform OnlyFans. Rachel first thought it was a disgusting, sleazy site, but had to admit the way Susie was telling her about it seemed appetizing, and the best selling point was she could make a ton of money from the comfort of her own home. Within a week, Rachel set up lights in her bedroom. She already had them anyway, as she used to blog a lot on social media, but never ever thought she would be doing such dirty photos, etc. She posted a few sexy photos, but nothing too explicit. Within a week, she was delighted to see that her followers were going up, and the first month she had made over 1,000 euros. After a while, she started posting exclusive content for her followers who would pay more, and she even got tips for no extra content. One night she received a very creepy message from a guy that paid her to pretend to slit her throat with a knife. She had an open mind at this stage, but still found it very creepy, a guy asking her to get a knife and pretend to slit her throat. The man got very pushy, saying he would pay more money if she did it, and he wouldn't take no for an answer. So she just spoke a little bit more and then blocked him. That night, Rachel was walking her usual walk she used to do around the block in the evening when she heard a noise. She thought it might have just been a dog or a cat, but looked anyway. There was nothing there. She kept walking until she heard it again. This time she froze, wondering, could someone be actually following her? Suddenly a man appeared and she jumped. Then she screamed when she saw a man pull out a knife and put it to her throat. He said, "You stupid little bitch." Rachel was thankful she took karate classes when she defended herself and was able to knock the knife from the man's hand. Then she knocked the man to the ground and grabbed the knife and held it to his throat. He was smiling, and that made her blood boil. She picked his skin, and there was blood. Then there was more blood as she stuck it in more. He told her, "Okay, that's enough, babe. I loved that roleplay. I am absolutely so turned on." Rachel then said, "I am turned on more, knowing that I am going to add a little extra to your roleplay. I am going to actually cut your freaking throat for real." With that, Rachel sliced the man's throat open. The next day, she was looking through her phone to see what messages or tips she got on her OnlyFans, but she was surprised when she saw a DM from the man that she blocked. She wondered, 1, how could she get a message from someone she blocked? And 2, how can she receive a message from someone she know she left absolutely dead? She opened the message, and there was a link to a video. She clicked on it and saw a video of her slicing the man's throat. It was the CCTV footage, but she made sure there was no camera. No, it couldn't have been CCTV footage. It must have been someone filming her. But who? She froze to death when she saw what happened. When she walked away, the man had vanished into thin air. Suddenly she turned around when she felt like someone blowing into her neck. The man was staring right into her eyes and said, "You shouldn't have took it that far. All those creeps on that horrible app are just a bunch of losers. I am your only fan, worth anything, and you just let me die." Rachel was trying to figure out what was happening. Suddenly, she woke up from a nightmare. It all came flooding back to her now, her killing the man. She wondered how she turned into a cold-blooded killer just over a few strange roleplay requests. Suddenly her phone rang. Susie said, "Rachel, you wouldn't believe what this crazy guy paid me €100,000 for last night. He was completely nuts. He claimed to have some power to turn any idea into a reality. Would you believe that? He said to me make up some horror story about OnlyFans about my best friend. I told him some wild crazy story that a guy messaged you to play a roleplay game, to him go to stab you and then you really stab him and then you would have a nightmare after it that the guy actually came back to life. Can you imagine? He actually paid me €100,000 for that, for some crazy stupid little story. I am extremely proud of myself for the ending. It really seemed to get him off." Rachel couldn't comprehend what she was hearing and asked Susie, how did her story end? Susie said, "He came back to life really, and first slit your throat, then teleported himself or whatever to slit mine. With that, the girls' phones were lying underground in a pool of blood, with them lying dead.
I was home alone watching a horror, and I felt tense as I hated being home alone. So the suspense of the movie added to my anxiety. I don't know why I'm such a crybaby. Maybe I should just not watch scary movies. I got a notification from my phone. It was a Snapchat notification. It was a message. It read, "Check my story." I wondered, who would it be from? As there was no photo on the profile, just black, I scrolled down my Snapchat contacts and viewed their story. I looked closer, squinting my eyes, as it was very dark. I could make out it was some sort of room. I jumped with fright when I realized it was my front door and the story was taken inside my hall. I looked up from the couch where I was sitting into the hall, but could not see anything. I realized the story wouldn't have been live, of course. Maybe it was my boyfriend Jake playing some stupid prank on me, but I still felt dread overcome me and was paralyzed with fear. Whoever this is could still be in my house. I got another notification and almost turned my phone off, but knew that wouldn't change anything if someone was actually in my house. I pressed the button and viewed the snap. This time it was a video. I could see the back of my head and my phone in my hand. Whoever was filming this snap was just behind me and is just behind me now. My heart jumped in my chest and I felt like screaming, but couldn't as I was frozen with fear. I suddenly felt a hand touch my shoulder and jumped and screamed. A man walked around with a mask, then took the mask off, and he stared right at me. Let me introduce myself. You can call me, Jake. You don't know me, as you were too busy stealing my phone the other day. I followed you home, and that's how I know where you live. I was going to call the police, but decided there would be something more creative I could do. I shouted, "Please, please, I don't know what you're talking about. I didn't steal any phone." The man pulled out a phone. "Oh, but you see, you did. I have it all here on camera. Luckily, my good old observant friend caught the whole thing while pretending to be busy texting. He showed me the camera and I felt disgust watching my twin sister kissing my boyfriend. I looked up in fear, hoping he would believe me. That is not me. That is my twin. I looked up in fear, hoping he would believe me. That is not me. That is my twin sister cheating with my goddamn boyfriend. Jake laughed. Do you expect me to believe that? I flicked through my phone and showed him a pic of me and my twin sister Sarah. He looked at it and then back to me. Well, where is your twin sister then? I was shaking with fear. She's at work. She will be home at 12. It was 11:30 now. I said, that bitch was kissing my boyfriend. I'll lead you right to her if you like. Jake smiled again and said, sounds like a plan. But work, wherever that is, well, that's not a place where I can exactly get revenge. I got out my phone and Jake looked at it to see was it his. I knew it wasn't. I'll call her to come straight home. Let me use my home phone. I have no credit. He nodded. Go on then, call her now. I picked up the phone and after a few rings she answered. Please come back home straight after work. I'm in trouble with my project. I need some help. The deadline is tomorrow. It's an emergency. I hung up before any reply. He said to me, It looks like your twin sister is a thief and someone that stole her own twin sister's boyfriend. Wow, that's bad. This bitch will have what's coming to her. I smiled. You can say that again? If I knew about her being with my boyfriend, I would have tracked you down myself to you teach her a lesson. At 12:10, my sister pulled up in the driveway in a car and knocked on the door. I opened it and Jake was standing at the side. My sister walked in and a cop came in behind her. Once I saw the cop, I screamed, "Please, help, help, he's in my house." I admitted to the cop afterwards. It was me that stole Jake's phone, but had to pretend it was my twin sister. I held the mute button down when I made the call to my sister. I spoke certain words, so instead of her hearing, "I'm in trouble with my project, I need some help, the deadline is tomorrow, it's an emergency," she heard, "I'm in trouble, I need help, it's an emergency." I was happy that it worked, pressing mute with certain words, so that is all she heard. And I will never ever steal anything again. Marie broke up with her boyfriend, Jason, a month ago and has been single since. She misses the company, going out, having a coffee or having a meal. She found it hard to meet people and her friends were praising the dating app Tinder. Some even said they met amazing people through the app. Her best friend Sarah is with her boyfriend of 6 months and they met on Tinder, so she decided to give it a go. She set up a date through Tinder in a local bar where they had a few drinks. Her date was a man in his early 20s called Sam. He had a really good job and she found him dreamy looking, and he seemed to tick all the boxes for her type of guy. There was a guy playing pool next to them, and Marie found it strange what happened. The guy accidentally hit Sam. He turned around to apologize and said, "Oh, sorry, buddy." Sam didn't answer, just gave him a cold, nasty look. Marie found it very, very strange indeed, but overlooked it. After the drinks, Sam asked Marie would she like a drive home, and she knew he only drank coffee in the bar, so there was no reason to refuse. Plus, it was a half-hour walk to her house and she felt very tired. She said that would be great, and they both walked out into Sam's car. When they arrived at Marie's house, they walked up to her door and Marie said, "Thanks." Sam was hoping she'd ask him in, and he felt relief when she said, "Would you like to come in for another coffee?" "Sure," he said. When Marie shut the door, she turned to kiss Sam, and all of a sudden, a man bolted for Sam, knocking him to the ground. Marie screamed in terror, and then realized the man who knocked Sam to the ground was her ex-boyfriend, Jason. She knew he was the jealous type, but never expected him to attack the next guy she met. She shouted at him to stop. Jason suddenly grabbed a gun out of his pocket and shot Sam in the shoulder. Sam fell, holding his shoulder, crying in pain. Marie was trembling in fear with her crazy ex-boyfriend in front of her, holding a gun. He said, "Don't move." Suddenly, Sam pointed a gun right at Jason and shot him in the head. Marie cried hysterically, knowing her ex-boyfriend was just killed before her eyes, but knew if it wasn't him, he would have shot her. Jason looked up at her and said, "Don't worry, it was self-defense." Then she heard movement behind her and turned around to see a large man staring straight at her. It suddenly hit her that her boyfriend wasn't telling her not to move, but he was telling the man behind her not to move to save her. Fear and dread rushed through her, knowing she was alone with two men who would no doubt kill her. Suddenly the door burst open, knocking the guy in front of Marie, and Sam lifted the gun, shouting, "Get back or I'll shoot." It was the man from the bar playing pool. He ducked and rammed right into Sam, then lifted his fist and punched him so hard he knocked him out. He then grabbed the gun, pointing it at the other man, and shouted, "You move one muscle and I'll shoot your head off." Marie had already rang the police. The man introduced himself to Marie after the police arrived and told her, after explaining to the police, he knew there was something off about the guy and knew something was up when he left a note on the table. He walked over and gave a glance just before a man could pick it up, and it had written on it, "Follow us, I'm going to her house." So he followed them to see what was going on. Marie was thanking her lucky stars, how lucky she was that the man whose name was Tom was observant enough to spot something very sinister was going on. She worried what could have happened to her if he didn't save her, and she promised herself she'd never ever date anyone through Tinder or anyone online again.
I was hanging out at a bar with my friends, and they were talking about this weird guy called Brian B. Westbay on Facebook. The bar was very loud, so I couldn't really follow what they were saying, but it sounded very interesting to me, so I researched it when I went home. It was very strange and lured me in to find out more and more about him. I read in a forum that he wasn't really a person, not human, and was some sort of supernatural entity. There were multiple rumours, but there were two main stories that caught my eye. One was that Brian's account was set up by the government to add as many people on Facebook as they can and spy on them. But there was a glitch in the system, and it gathered no information and brought back no results the government were hoping to get. The second main story is the one that really grabbed my attention, and to me sounded more plausible. It was that Brian B. Westbay was a regular everyday guy who was obsessed with social media. He was constantly posting updates from when he woke up and got out of bed in the morning to when he went to sleep at night. One night he got very drunk and came home and started posting very embarrassing stuff, and one of the videos went viral. Brian was so embarrassed he committed suicide. I was looking at his profile and it was mainly empty. There were no updates, no profile picture, etc. But I added him just out of curiosity. A few minutes later, he accepted my request. I was startled when I got a message in my inbox which said, "I am happy to be your friend." I answered back, "Hi Brian, thanks for accepting." I got a reply, "We are friends." And every single message I sent for the next few minutes, I got the same reply, "We are friends." I lost my cool not getting no proper reply, so I typed in capital letters and sent, "Can we speak?" A few seconds later, an audio file was sent, and there was static noise, but I could feel my heart thump in my chest when I heard a weird voice at the end say, "Hello, friend. It frightened me so much I messaged back, "We are not friends." I got back different sad emojis. Suddenly, his profile picture changed to a creepy face. I looked at it and suddenly felt myself drawn to look at it more closely. That night, when I turned off my lights, I saw his face. I felt dread at the vision of the face just inches from me. I froze with fear. As days went by, I kept seeing him, more and more. When I wake up during the night, his creepy face is inches from me, looking right at me. Brian Westbay wants to be friends with me and so many more people, I bet. But remember, if you come across his Facebook profile, before you add him, just know that he is a friend you can't get rid of. Hi, my name is Siobhan. I was really stressed lately and needed a break away, so decided to pack up work for a week and book myself into a lovely looking hotel in a really nice resort in Florida. Judging by the photos online of it, the place was exactly what I needed. I just needed to get away from everything for a few days, so hopefully a week would do the job. When I had all my luggage packed, I got the cab to the airport and was on my way to Florida. I was so happy knowing I would spend the next week away from all the stress of everything that was going on lately. I was very confident I would feel so much better after the break. When I arrived, I checked in and got the elevator up to my room, left my baggage and headed straight for the beach. It was so relaxing just lying down on the beach with the air blowing in my face. I felt like I was just about to feel the benefits of what I'd feel spending a whole week in this beautiful resort. That night I was in the hotel's bar and I was feeling kind of fed up, thinking that in a week I'd be back to my ordinary life and the troubles and stress will be waiting right for me. But I knew I just had to make the most of being here. Suddenly a guy walked up to me in the bar and said to me, "Hello, I'm very sorry to interrupt you, but I just saw you sitting there and you looked kind of lonely and a bit fed up, to be honest. And I was wondering, would you like some company?" I looked strangely at first, wondering, did I really look that fed up? And then I replied, "Well, sure, thanks. I guess I'd enjoy some company." The man asked, "So, where are you from?" I told him I was from New York and decided I needed to have a break away from the stress in the Big Apple. He smiled and said, "Do you know something? That makes a lot of sense to me, and trust me, this place is like a paradise. If you like, I can show you around sometime." I smiled and said, "Sure, that sounds like fun." Then the man said, "Oh, by the way, pardon my manners, I didn't even ask your name. My name is Sam. What's yours?" "My name is Siobhan. Nice to meet you, Sam." The next day, I was relaxing on the beach with Sam. He spoke. "To be honest, when I saw you alone and looking kind of down, I had to come and say hello." I looked confused and asked him why. He replied, "A few weeks ago there was this beautiful girl who was sitting by herself in the bar, just like you were, and well, she looked to be upset over something. I was going to introduce myself and ask her would she like company, but I didn't. And well, the next day I found out she was after committing suicide by jumping off her room's balcony. I felt so sorry for the girl and told Sam that there was no way of him knowing she was so upset and was going to commit suicide. That night, me and Sam were in the bar having a few drinks and speaking. I wondered would it be too soon. When we were in my room, we sat on the bed and had another drink. Sam stood up and said to me, "Do you know what I love most about this hotel? The beautiful view from the balcony." We both walked out to the balcony and were admiring the view. I said to him, "It's beautiful." Suddenly Sam put his hand on my back and was about to push me over when I took my taser out of my pocket and tasered him. He jumped back, feeling surprised I was ready for him. Then I said, "That girl you were telling me committed suicide. We both know that she didn't jump." Then I held my phone up and showed him a picture that was taken of him without his knowledge, with text underneath it saying, "Help, call the police, this man is going to kill me." I called the hotel and asked for my friend Lisa, who you pushed, but when they had sadly confirmed to me she had committed suicide, then I had an expert in facial recognition do a background check on you, and boy was I happy to know that you were working in this hotel. I knew the police would let you off, so I have my own idea of justice. Also, thanks so much for letting me know what type of lunatic you are by wanting to push me off the balcony also. But I'd just like to know why. Why would you want to kill an innocent woman after just killing an innocent woman just a few weeks ago? With that, the door was knocked open, and I heard police shout, "Stop, police!" They walked over to me, and they couldn't even see the damn man lying on the ground. I was cursing this hotel's CCTV footage for picking up my face and letting them finally see me when they were looking for me for months. And I was wondering why, because I knew I was on the run, but didn't know why. It was months later I had learned there was no man. I suffer from a condition called dissociative disorder, which means I was the man, but there was never a man, and it was me who killed my friend.